Sometimes in life, you make an encounter. You meet somebody, and it is like a revelation. It is like magic. Something is happening to you because of this encounter. Now, I had an encounter like this 2 days ago, when Steffi told me I will have a chat with a writer, an author, called Elif Shafak. And I said, Elif who? No idea. So I didn't go on Google, but I went to a bookshop. And I bought the books of Elif. And since 2 days, it's magic. It is sheer magic. Because I met you. Now, I met her in person 1 hour ago. But I met her through her books. And I thought, well, she could be my daughter. Actually, she is my sister, my mother, my grandmother. She is what the French call l'éternel féminin, the eternal woman. A woman who does have no age, except the past. And her past is influencing her present and will influence her future. And by reading through this book, I found it is one of the strongest books on women I have ever read. And there is a wonderful preface in the French edition by Amin Malouf. And he says one sentence, son univers, celui de Elif, est celui des femmes éternelles et des hommes qui passent. Her universe is one of the eternal feminine, the women who stay and the men who pass by. And that is exactly what I found in this book, because this book is about women. It is about old women, young women, grandmothers, granddaughters, mothers. They are very present. They have damn it strong personalities. And the men who sometimes come by, you feel that they are intruding something important, and it's better to get them away. And there is something which fascinated me in your women, Elif, and I felt so relieved. It's not the kind of women who wear size 36, right, who have done everything right, their studies, their kids, their husbands, their careers. No. It's the women who have problems, who have dreams, who have solutions. It's women who have life. Very strong female characters. Where did you get them from? What is your experience which made it possible for you to get this life of women into a book?
Thank you so much. I was very honored by your words. I truly appreciate. I think part of it comes from my own personal background, the way I was raised. I did not grow up in a typical patriarchal Turkish family. I was raised by a single mother, a divorcee, which was very unusual in 1970s. And also partly I was raised by a very superstitious grandmother. So I grew up observing these two very, very opposite womanhoods, you know, and seeing their solidarity, the sisterhood, between them in a way, which I value a lot. I observe women a lot, but I also observe myself. And I know women are very strong, amazingly capable of renewing themselves, but at the same time, I don't want to romanticize womanhood. I want to see the reality, you know, our flaws, our mistakes, our disappointments. And also for me, patriarchy is not a black and white system in which men oppress women full stop. I think it's not like that. I think it's far more complicated. So I think we women also actively take part in the continuity of patriarchy. And I want to bring that out in my books as well.
Something which has very strongly influenced me while reading your book. I only read one so far. I have gone through very quickly. But this is books you cannot read quickly. You have to come back to the words, to the characters, to the life which is in this book. And something which I thought was extraordinary, and that was the respect. Yeah. The respect, these very diverse women, with a very diverse intelligence, very diverse beauty, very diverse characters, have for one and another. So how is it possible that women, although they are living in the same family, but they are not the same, but in the end, they have the same goal. And this is a goal of life and of respect. Is this your personal experience with your mother, with your grandmother, and with you as a small girl living in this patriarchal society where you need the sisterhood in order to survive?
Yes, in many ways it is. When my mother and my father got married, my mom was 19 years old. She was a university student back in Turkey. And because she fell in love and she thought love was enough, she dropped out of university, you know. So she followed my father to France, where I was born and where my father was having his PhD. But the marriage didn't work out. So when my mother came back to Turkey as a divorcee with a baby in her arms, she had no diploma, no money, no job, and nowhere to go. And what happens, and I'm talking about 1970s, a very conservative Muslim neighborhood. So when a woman is in such a position, they immediately marry her off, and usually she's married to someone older than herself because she's not very valuable anymore in the marital market. She has dropped down a peg. So they immediately wanted her to marry her, to find a husband to protect her. And interestingly, it was my traditional grandmother, my superstitious, my less educated, my Eastern grandmother who stepped in and he said, okay, wait a minute, she's not going to get married again. She's going back to university. She's going to graduate. She's going to have her diploma, have her job, and then she can decide what to do with her life. In the meantime, I'm going to take care of Elif. And I never forgot that, that left an impact on me. Unfortunately, that kind of solidarity is something that is amiss in today's world. We don't see it much, but we as women must develop those networks of solidarity.
Something else, which I have read through your book. It's a book which is taking place in the Eastern world.
Yes.
But an Eastern world, as when we watch the media, don't know it anymore. Because we know that in this Eastern world there is a lot of hatred, a lot of contradiction. And you manage to put everything in the same environment. The Greeks, the Romans, the Armenians, the Kurds, the Turks, and although they don't understand each other, they manage to live together. Do you still think it is in today's world possible that those cultures which come from the same origin but today have learned hatred are capable to live together?
Yes. I come from a country that was once upon a time a multi-ethnic, multilingual, multi-religious entity, yeah? Of course, there were problems, but it had a more cosmopolitan character, a more cosmopolitan social fabric. And out of that, we carved out a nation state that was very much inspired by the ideology of sameness, the ideology of nationalism. And I'm very critical of ideologies that support any kind of ultranationalism, any extremist ideology that teaches us as human beings that we are different than them and then we are better than them. You know, that is a very dangerous thing for all of us. So there is a part of me that very much appreciates cosmopolitanism. I think in Turkey, by losing cosmopolitanism, we lost a lot. And I see that absence, that big hole in our culture. It is very important for me to recognize difference, to respect diversity, but at the same time to try to develop a platform where people can feel included equally. You know, how to build a culture of coexistence. These are things that I think about, that I care about, and I think many of that reflects in my work.
I have read on page 188 of your book one of the sentences which is, I think, basic for what you describe. You describe the difference of thinking between Armenians and Turks.
Right.
And, well, it is in French. I try to translate it. You say that the Armenians think that time is a cycle during which the past explains the present, whereas for Turks, time has stopped as a precise moment in history, and history has started after this time. Can you explain this a little?
Yes, I think, first of all, Turkey is a society of amnesia. You know, we have very poor memory. We have very limited sense of historical continuity. Turkish main historiography or main narrative in Turkey is full of ruptures. For me, it's very interesting to see the contrast when I listen to many Armenians speak, how memory is such an important part of their existence, such an important part of their identity, whereas for us, amnesia is an important part of our identity. I think as human beings, first of all, memory is a responsibility. We must remember the mistakes, the sins of the past, first of all, so that we don't repeat them in the future, so that we can have this conscience, you know, this maturity to face our own mistakes. We're not very good at doing that in Turkey. But in the long run, I think it's healthy for human beings to forget a little bit as well. So one day in my ideal world, I would like to see the Armenians forgetting more and the Turks remembering more. But for that to happen, I think Turks need to start remembering first. Only if I can start remembering, I can expect other people to start forgetting. So memory is a responsibility.
Say that once more. That was such an important sentence.
Yeah.
Underline it, because this sentence has not only to do with a part of the world, it has to do with our world. Because if we are continuing, like remembering only the horror stories, we are going to repeat the horror stories. We see it everywhere. We see it in the Middle East, we see it in Ukraine, we see it everywhere, and it's all based on the same roots. So what you say and in your book and how you explain it through these women who have the memory and who cherish the memory and live through the memory to the past and also to their dreams, it is of utmost importance.
Thank you. For me, it was very important to show how women are the bearers, the carriers of memory. As I said, Turkey has a lot of amnesia, but women, from generations to generations, from grandmothers to granddaughters, they transfer oral memory, you know, oral culture. So people do remember things, but when it comes to written culture, the books, the media, the literature, you know, the things we produce in written culture, there's an amazing amnesia. When I walk around in Istanbul, we have there's no urban memory. You know, we have no clue who lived in that house, what happened on that street. We have no clue. And also we must bear in mind that Turkey, when changed its alphabet in early 1920s, so today's Turks cannot read the script of their grandfathers. Sometimes when you walk by an Ottoman cemetery, you have no clue as a young Turk who lies there, you know, who's the dead person there. Whereas when I walk around in Berlin, it's very interesting for me to see these signs of urban memory everywhere, even if it's painful, even if it's, you know, even when it's horrible, because we must remember it is a responsibility. But as you said, if we go to the other extreme and repeat memory as our only, you know, the foremost thing that connects us, there is a danger in that as well, because then you can't move beyond, you know, time becomes repetitive, and there's a distinction between us and them again. So in the long run, I think we need some degree of forgetting, because only with, you know, forgetting and forgiving. But before I can expect anyone to do that, you know, I must face up to my own sins. I must accept my own, you know, history. And in that sense, I think in Turkey, we must accept that memory is a responsibility.
You are living between two worlds. You have a very strong feeling for Turkey and for its cultures. I say it in plural because sometimes today you think Turkey has only one culture, and it has a plurality of cultures, where we need women to remember them and to get the lessons of this memory for building a better future. But you are living also in London. Now you can have nothing more contrast than Istanbul and London. How do you manage with these two realities in your life?
Yes, I feel attached to both cities in very different ways, and as you said, they're very different cities. I love Istanbul. I love its, you know, vibe, how vivid it is. How the pure energy, but at the same time it can be very suffocating, because our lives as writers tend to be different in Turkey. Writers are public figures in Turkey, so people either, you know, hate you or love you, but there's almost nothing in between, which is very unhealthy. You know, it's a very writer-oriented world instead of writing-oriented. Instead of literary criticism, it's personal attacks or personal adoration. Like supporting football teams, we support our writers. The good side is books matter in Turkey. Words matter. Stories matter. The downside is words put you in trouble. So I see both sides. In London, in many ways, I do feel more free, but I've always been connected to Istanbul, so I'm a nomad. That nomadic spirit is very important for me, and I enjoy commuting between languages the way I like commuting between cities. So I write in both English and Turkish. I write in both languages.
You said something interesting when you say how the Turks are relating to their writers.
Yes.
It can be an adoration, but it can also be a hate.
Absolutely.
In 2006, you were brought in front of the court because of what you have been writing about the Turkish society in this very book, La Bâtarde d'Istanbul, the bastard of Istanbul. And you were acquitted. But you might not be acquitted today. How has the evolution gone in the last years for freedom of the media, press freedom, freedom tout court in Istanbul?
I wish I could tell you that we have made big progress since then, but that won't be my answer. I don't think we have made any progress at all. In terms of freedom of expression, media freedom, media diversity, I am worried, because in the past we had more diversity, more different voices in the media. In Turkey, every journalist, every writer, every novelist knows that because of an article, because of a book, or sometimes because of a tweet, you can be in trouble. And we rarely talk about self-censorship. I think it is the hardest thing to talk about, because if somebody is pointing a gun at you, you can at least say, look, you know, they're forcing me to do something. But if you yourself are censoring your own words, how do you explain that? So I think there's also a lot of self-censorship. My case was very surreal, because for the first time, a book, fictional characters were put on trial. My lawyer had to defend Armenian fictional characters in court. It was very, very surreal. But I don't want to paint a negative picture fully, because there was also a positive side, and that is from the readers. There's an amazing readership in Turkey, and I will claim that 85% of that is women. Women from all ages, from all backgrounds. Women read more books than men, and women talk about books more passionately than men. I have many male readers who come to me and say, you know, I wasn't going to read you, but because of my wife, because she reads you, I started reading, or because of my girlfriend. So women also spread out the word. We owe a lot to female readers. One thing that upsets me is, even though women read a lot, when I look at the written culture, it's always men, mostly men writing. So it is as if men write, women read. You know, we need to change that. We need more women writing and more men reading fiction, reading books. So I want to, you know, make that upside down.
You spoke about self-censorship. Well, that doesn't go, it seems to me, for you, because not only are you writing the books where you analyze the cultures of your environment, but you also write articles where you do not hesitate to criticize very strongly the political leadership of your country. One article I read was, the title was Erdogan's Slap in the Face of All Turks, which is actually a criticism of these men who lose self-control and just use violence in order to get their message across. Is this, what was the reaction when you wrote this article, which was published all over the world?
You know, I think writing political commentaries about Turkey is very difficult. And I'll tell you why. Because we are an extremely polarized society. And people expect you to be either here or there. We have become a society of ghettos, you know. There are cultural ghettos in Turkey. We've almost become people who can't talk to each other anymore. The gap between government supporters, because the government has a huge support as well, and the gap between, you know, the other side, the government opponents. There's a huge segment of the society that is opposing the government as well. This gap has become so wide that nobody wants to bridge it anymore. I think in Turkey there are 3 areas left in which people from different backgrounds can still get together. One is art, one is literature, and the other one is football. Other than these 3 areas, you know, people from different political views don't even talk to each other. Now, in such a badly divided society and in a very collectivistic society, I want to be and remain an individual without belonging in any camp, you know, to retain my individuality. This is very difficult, especially for women. I think it's much more difficult because we're always seen as somebody's wife, as somebody's mother, somebody's, you know, daughter. But when I write, I am critical, but I am also looking from an individualistic angle. This is a very important nuance for me, you know. If there are things that I criticize on either side, I should be able to say it. I think I try to be always fair and compassionate, but at the same time very critical. That balance is important to me.
Well, I think, Elif, you gave the solution. And the solution is sisterhood, are the women.
Yes.
So I hope that all women will give their men, their sons, your books to read. And I hope that you make a pleasure to all of yourself here. Read the books of Elif, because it is an encounter. It is magic, it is life, it is women at their best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.